Has anyone ever thought about what would happen if you had the same replacement who does the work for you, does sports, and even earns money for you? At some point, it became a reality. Just the same, the hero had such a life. From the flashback, you can find out that the city was attacked by monsters that were several times larger than those in fairy tales or legends. The most disgusting thing is that they destroyed absolutely everything in their path. The hero looks into the window already broken by the monster. It could have been completely different, but someone else did not give up, because life could be completely different. Not like it is now. The hero works very hard, if only life would be comfortable, and without any of these current problems. And now there is a battle between a character in golden armor and a giant stone monster. In the hands of a man, some kind of weapon, similar to a sword. So there is also a gun in the second one. And it was with this set that he was going to kill the stone giant. He notices that this is a real whopper, so problems may arise. But the only thing visible on his face is fatigue. The monster's eyes are burning red, but the hero is unshakable, because he understands why he is doing this. And now this machine is being attacked by several people who are copies of the main character. He is not alone, so he is not afraid of this battle. A guy has to work, study, eat, and that's not all he has to do. But there are things he wants to do. There are also a lot of them. There is a notebook with an unfulfilled homework on the table, and an untouched dinner is on the table. Scrambled eggs, rice, bread, and tea. The hero continues to play games, sitting behind a huge monitor and wearing headphones. That's one of his desires, to play games. Here he is already sitting and looking at the beautiful landscape of the town. And what about the bar with friends, where you get drunk to celebrate some holiday that you learned about from the internet? To sit in the same company with those who go hand in hand with you through life. But what about the desire to go on a date with a beautiful and cute girl? Isn't it a dream to have two bodies at once that do something of this for sure? And here he stands in front of a copy of himself and looks. The hero created himself, who looks like you're looking into the water. Really, naked. Young Sang-woo is a plump student at Jeonguk University. He just wants to finally come home and rest because he's tired. Two guys are talking about something, about some skills, intelligence. And so Sang-woo dreams out loud that he has a clone. And now some man attracts attention to himself and his project. His name is Park Won-tae. He talks about being responsible for the 10th Portal Awakening program. The Awakening program is a program launched by the government to help open up the abilities of a person that are hidden somewhere in the depths of him. To do this, they just need to cross the portal. A short explanation ends, and then he gestures to start the first test of this portal. People were divided into groups to make it easier for them to pass through portals. And here they come, a group of columns in a row. Our Young-san ended up in group 37. In principle, he did not wait very long for his turn. He is greeted by a cute girl with gathered hair and formal clothes and with earrings, who checks his identity through a bracelet on his arm with a device that reads information about his owner. As soon as the identification is successful, she invites him to the portal, which exudes blue and blue color. He is asked to hand over the devices and then approach the portal, which he does. Sang-woo passes through it and user identification takes place. Young Sang-woo gets the rights to use the system by which you get your ability. Registration has ended. He opens his eyes abruptly, and he is sitting on the floor. He rubs his head, which hurts and seems to burst right now. But once he pays attention to what is beyond his nose, he sees many more people and various military technologies. Apparently this is a bunker. After traveling through the portal, a light smoke remains around it. All the people who were in this place also felt bad. Apparently it is the passage through this portal that causes such strange and painful sensations. And so someone used his ability for the first time. While light appeared and flames broke out around some bird that looked like a phoenix. This ability is possessed by the girl who sat on the floor and admired her. Young Sang-woo, who was still feeling unwell after arriving at this place, was also watching all this. He was breathing heavily and clearly trying to put together a complete picture of the world after arriving at this place. He was approached from behind by one of the employees of this center, who conduct and take care of those who have just acquired their ability. Their dialogue began to be built because of the ability, so he offered to check her San-yu. He exhales and gets up from the floor, and then opens a panel with statistics about him. Yes, he is very weak and reproaches himself for his strength, not the best indicators, because they are almost the lowest. But don't you need to look at your ability now? Below is the subtitle skill, where you can read information about it. Young-san gets the ability to clone himself, and passive is the reinforcement of clones. So far, all this is only on the first level, so there is nothing to brag about. He wants to learn more, so a table with information about the skill appears in front of him. The ability is to create a clone that is identical to the bearer of this gift. It all depends on the energy. He is pulled out of his thoughts by the same employee. He assumes that Sang-woo has already finished checking the status of his window. He only agrees, but indicates the problem that his indicators are very weak. But in response, he only gets the fact that this is normal and so for all beginners, so do not worry about it now. And again the dialogue returned to the ability. Still, it would be interesting to know what it is like for him. Due to the unwillingness to hide such information, then Young-sen directly declares it. Cloning, to which he receives a reaction of surprise and nervous laughter. But the man in the jacket tells a story about a guy with illusory cloning. This skill was useless because the clones had absolutely no physical shell and quickly dissolved. So Sang-woo's ability is much better because the clones are real. He is offered to demonstrate his skill in a special place where people go for evaluation. Everyone wants to know what they think about their skill. There are officials in this place who would definitely be able to give an assessment. Now there is one of the newly arrived and newly minted characters who has gained his strength today. There are some exclamations around him and people look there with interest, even if they are standing far away. Still, everyone is interested in looking at other people's abilities. There was a guy who could turn his body into stone. He is sent to the research group to undergo a final scan and registration, so that he can return home without any problems. Just go through the portal. He enters some kind of cylinder where the scanning takes place. Steam formed around him when Sang-woo came out. He approached the worker and listened to all the information that the probability of the skill manifestation is 73%. And the special form of the awakened one was sent to the ID bracelet. And from that moment on, he is already going home. The young man working at the computer called the next one for the final analysis. Sitting on the train, he was just thinking about what had happened. The guy was still thinking about what kind of skill it was and how to use it. But already at home he was waiting for a game at the computer, which he left. He was lucky that it was over sooner than he thought. But as soon as he sat down at the table, he didn't like anything in the game, so he gave up on it and lay down on the futon to rest and forget a little from this day. There were thoughts in his head about the fact that he should start looking for a part-time job and work, because the payment for tuition and rent will not go anywhere, and games can be abandoned because their popularity is less and less. But he doesn't want to work either, but the idea of creating a clone suddenly came to his head. Because of this, he sits down and only then gets up to activate his ability, and it would never hurt to check in action. While Sang-woo is creating his clone, a blue glow appears around him, and energy comes from him, which then accumulates and breaks out of him to create exactly the same person. And then everything dissipates and a one-on-one copy of young Sang-woo stands in front of us. The hero arrives in shock. As soon as the energy gathered into a complete clone of young Sang-woo, he rose up in front of him. It feels like you're looking in a mirror, only you're dressed, and he's undressed. He is very surprised by this turn of events, so he asks him if he is exactly a clone. In response, he receives only confirmation that this is his copy. He wants to feel it to make sure it's not a dream. The clone addresses him as a master, yet he is a carrier, but it just makes him feel more uncomfortable. Still, the situation is that he used his ability for the first time, so absolutely everything that is possible is so interesting. He slaps his cheek to get out of his thoughts. He feels that this is a real physical body and not an illusion. Still, his ability is different from the skill of a guy who could create clones without a physical shell. But then he reacts to his nakedness and says that he should put on some clothes so that he will not be even more embarrassed in his presence. Sang-woo found some things that he gave to the clone. They were green pants and a white sweatshirt with the inscription City in the glitch format. The clone obeys any orders of its creator, so it declares it right away. And what is the first order to give him? The first thing he thought about was that he needed to sit down. But the clone does just that, although he didn't say it out loud. And now the game begins, follow all orders. Sang-woo seems to be playing with him, asking stupid actions that his clone performs implicitly. Sit down, stand up, repeat. He obviously did it several times, why he was exhausted. Still, he and his master have the same numbers according to the statistics of strength, health, stamina, and mana. His phone rang in his pocket, or rather vibrated with messages from his friend. As he had guessed, it was Jendo. He talked about what kind of skill he got himself. It was 2 whole hunter skills. But Sang-woo has not yet told about his ability, why he aroused the interest of his own friend. But he still does not answer the question he is interested in. While the hero is buried in his mobile phone, a sign appears in front of him, where it says that endurance has increased by 0 as much as 1,000th. He was surprised. We are introduced to George Lucas, who has the Flicker skill, an S-class runner in America, as well as the leader of the Enlightenment group. This is the first person who has passed Odin's tower, which no one has been able to conquer before. They are talking about the fact that at the moment, among a population of 300 million people, 80% of them are awake. But George needs absolutely 100% to be already with their skills. And if we take into account how many participants take part in the program every year, then absolutely everyone will receive skills within 5 years. But the head looks out the window at the night city. As he says, 5 years is not so long, so there is only a little bit left to wait. He stands as if towering over everyone who lives in this town. So also in one of the tall buildings. And now the frame switches back to young Sang-woo, who is no longer as fat as he was at the beginning. He's running somewhere in the park right now. He's obviously already tired, but he doesn't even plan to stop. Two guys are sitting on a bench discussing the running Sang-woo. As it turned out, he goes out for such a run every day, but his clothes can really hurt him. He's wearing a hoodie and jeans. It is clearly not necessary to run in the heat in such a form. One woman hands him a bottle of water so that he drinks and can cool off, but still works hard. But his reaction was very unexpected, because he took and ran away from the very place where he was resting. Apparently there is already enough rest for him. The woman is only surprised and assumes that he is just an introvert. Already at home, he weighs himself and looks at the fact that his weight is only 78 kilograms. He himself has really changed in appearance because his body has become more fit, and the extra layers of fat seem to have floated away. Young-san notices that lately he feels hungry, which is why he eats for two. He doesn't do anything, but his body is getting better and better day by day. During this time, his health, stamina, and even reflexes increased by the same 0.1 thousandth. And while this month was passing, he was exploring his ability properly. The pain and fatigue experienced by the clone is not transmitted to the carrier. He calmly tortured his clone in physical exercises and tasks that he almost fell off his feet. The next thing he knew, the clone simply disappears if it gets damaged or spends its energy above the limit. So they somehow ran around the football field to such an extent that the clone evaporated right while running, leaving only his clothes. With each change in the host's body, the clone's body also changes. That is, while Young-san was losing weight, the clone was also losing it. You can give orders from a distance. Somehow I wanted to check it out, so lying on my bed, the guy ordered me to stop running and start doing push-ups. At that time, people thought he was crazy since he switched from jogging to push-ups like that. One day he was sitting at the computer and began to be interested in information about hunters, which is why he started reading information on a nearby site called Wiki. It even talked about the characteristics. There are special and ordinary characteristics. And so the guy began to talk about the fact that the clone trains non-stop and does absolutely everything possible to fulfill the order of Sang-woo. It is due to such a technique that his strength, endurance, and reflexes rise almost constantly. Of course, not for such big and cherished numbers that absolutely everyone dreams of, but still it's even better. And he himself understands that he also needs to get involved in training himself in order to further improve his performance. Although this is only his guess, and he will not withstand such harsh training. And then he comes across a flyer about the gym, which invites him to take part in training in a harsh gym. What do you enter there? Health, personal trainer, muscle building, as well as a full range of exercises. There are two types of classes, Pilates and physical education. And so he decides to be the head that controls his limbs. Young Sang-woo wants to send his clone to a harsh gym for training, but he doesn't have enough money to register. He has only 123,801. Before that he spent money on food to satisfy his hunger, but he needs much more than he has left, so he comes up with the idea of getting a part-time job, and in which he could temper his characteristics even more. What will be needed for his clone is within your power, all for the sake of their characteristics. He sits down at the computer and starts typing information about places where new workers are needed, and where physical labor is needed. For example, in construction work, it will just help to train the body and earn enough money. He thinks that at first he himself will need to start working, because in an unknown area at a distance it will be difficult for him to navigate. And as soon as his eyes catch the line that interested him, flipping through the ads on the search for employees, he immediately begins to read it. It is looking for a part-time employee of the logistics center Vukan. The work is tied to delivery and pickup. You need to work from Monday to Saturday, but Sunday is a day off. And moreover, a fairly good amount per day, 100,000 won. Sang-woo dials the number listed in the ad to get a job. As it turned out, there will be no preliminary interview, so you can come right away and start your work. He says that he can start work tomorrow, to which the question is whether he could not come today. Jong-san agreed if possible. Now they are waiting for him at the logistics center by 6:30 in the evening. He exhales and puts the phone away, and he continues to stick in the computer. Soon he arrives at the right place where he was assigned a time. He came to a meeting with his clone, whom he wrapped up so that his face did not stand out. No one should notice their similarity. The thing is that he is afraid that something might go wrong, so his lies will not be able to become true. Because of this, he does not even think about his clone being his twin. San-woo names his clone after his friend Jendo, and gives a little instruction on what to do and say. The building of the center itself is quite large, not what he expected to see. The most important thing now is not to get lost. But he is met by his acquaintance, who even at first did not recognize the young man because of his rather athletic physique. Dokchul asks his friend about what he forgot here, but without further explanation, he says that he came with a friend to work part-time. Therefore, he was told in which direction to go to get to the office. It is a small 2-story building. Young-san is glad that he met his friend who helped him navigate in this space. And as soon as the acquaintance disappears from sight, the guy exhales and feels all the real feeling of anxiety because of the established dialogue between them. He wonders if his clone is worried, to which he receives a negative answer. And now he is already walking towards the office to start his work. But the work turned out to be too much for him, because it was hard for him to cope with dragging weights. Sweat was pouring down his body, and tears were coming from his eyes because of his hopeless condition. As he says, he treated this job too arrogantly. But other workers felt fine and calmly dragged heavy loads from one place to the truck. One employee walks around in a t-shirt and a bandana behind his head, the second in a gray t-shirt. And the clone, who is wearing a cap, mask, and hoodie, also feels great while dragging boxes. My thoughts were only that San-woo had come in vain, because his clone feels very fine and calm here. Finally, an hour's break came. It's already dark, but the main character is exhausted because of the work that is too much for him. As if he had given up the ghost. He sits so tensely that even the clone glares at him. And then they are handed 2 aluminum cans of soda. This man treats them and says that it is necessary to replenish the fluid in the body, and they should eat, because otherwise they will not be able to carry the boxes further. Dokchul sits down next to the guys. He turns to a clone of his acquaintance, whom he takes for his friend according to legend, and also notices that he did not utter a word while he was working here. He introduces himself as Kim Jendo, to which he receives the compliment of the name that it is very masculine. And then Dokchul already turns to San-woo, noticing that this is the first time he is engaged in such work. And after all, this occupation is very tedious for him, although he, like the clone, is praised for not running away like the others. And they also notice that they have the courage for such work. But if it wasn't for the money, then Young Sang-woo wouldn't have set foot on such a land with a bunch of weights. The conversation goes into the mainstream about where the hero is studying now. He replies that he is studying at Jeongguk University. His friend Dokchul admires the fact that he was able to get there, because this is a good university, and he would have given his daughter there, but she is not studying well. San-woo says that he entered there with not very good grades, just a couple of licenses and a special permit. This sparked the man's idea why he offered him a new part-time job to work out with his daughter. And money beckons. He just has to pull her up in all subjects, because she's really terrible at studying. The price is quite acceptable for a young man, only 50,000 won for each lesson, lasting 2 hours, and only a couple of times a week. And they make an agreement. After work, Dokchul is going to discuss such a moment with her daughter, and then, if she agrees, she will notify the young man. And as soon as the man left them, Chong-sin checked the statistics and decided to have a snack. But as soon as he looked into the bag, he found nothing. It turns out that all their food was completely eaten by his clone. The clone ate everything so greedily that it made the owner's face curl in a grimace of discontent. And he started swearing at him because he didn't even bother to share food with his master, who just made him out of his energy. On the morning of the next day, Young Sang-woo was in pain because he was unaccustomed to carrying so much heavy stuff. His expression looks very painful, but having come to the idea that he would use clone number 1 for that side job, the guy got out of bed. He is surprised that the clone continues to work, because its characteristics are only improving. He asks him to come back, because he still wants to recall him and call him back, so as not to lose his clothes on the street when he disappears. At first he decided to eat, and very tightly, and as soon as he finished his meal, his clone had already returned home. He is ordered to go wash and take off his clothes, but really, he is completely wet and tired. It is worth giving him a rest, and only then recall and call again. Recently, he deducted how to develop a regeneration characteristic. Repeated infliction of wounds one after another. This is exactly what he will do on the clone. But because it hurts to hurt him, he just pricks with a needle. He decided to just apply these little wounds often. Number 1 sat on the bed and looked at his creator. The clone was ordered to eat ramen when he gets hungry, but as soon as he eats, he immediately works. Also, Sanwoo handed him a phone that had previously been for mobile games, because before, Sanwoo was only interested in this. He needs to answer calls so that the owner is aware of everything that is happening to him, and so it was convenient to follow him from a distance. He was looking for a gym on a flyer where rigorous training takes place, but while he was wandering in search of it, he met the real Kim Jendo. It was a muscular and big guy who was hugging him by the neck and hugging him. He didn't recognize him at first either because of his already skinny body structure, but he still realized that it was his friend Young Sang-woo. He said that he does sports, and Jendo also boasted about it, and so he talks about where he is going. And then, as if his friend had just suffered because of the mention of this place, because there is a pretty coach there, it's immediately obvious that he goes to that gym just to stare at her. And in that gym there are only strong men and jocks who train and pump up muscle mass for themselves. Someone pulls dumbbells, developing arm muscles, someone on treadmills, someone lifts a barbell, developing shoulders. They are met by a very nice guy, though distracted from his break for a snack, who offers to register. This guy has shaved temples, brown hair, a muscular build, and is also very pleasant to talk to, since he has to himself. He says that they are now getting a discount on a 3-month subscription for 161. He also advises Chong-san on whether he performs all the exercises on the simulators correctly. But his friend just decided to show everything he is capable of, causing everyone to be surprised by such a splash of energy. Jendo's skill is strength, because he has 2 whole 1/10 of it in terms of characteristics. And then Sanwoo thinks about other more advanced hunters. He reflects that all hunters can be strong, since they are high class. But then the phone rang in his pocket. He got a call from his friend, with whose daughter he had agreed to study. He says he talked to his wife and daughter, so they don't mind at all that he will study with her. He is asked to come to the house to talk face to face, and he agrees. When he was waiting for the door to open, he was still remembering why his friend refused to take a subscription. Because there was no beautiful girl coach there. Stupid reason. But it's even better because he won't worry about a clone going there instead of him. It turns out that the father of the family decided everything himself, and under the screams of his daughter, he tries to sneak off to work, so he hits the door in the face of Sanwoo. The girl is surprised that the guest came so early.